All right, so this one is interesting because I see so many people that fall victim into this issue without even realizing it. And while thinking that they're actually doing what they're supposed to be doing in the dating stages, they're actually taking a few steps back with every text interaction. So let's talk about why is it not a good idea to interact with someone through text messaging too much at these early stages and what to do instead. So one of the things that I often see is that let's say you meet someone on a dating app, you meet them at the gym, you meet them at the grocery store, it doesn't matter, right? The first few interactions, the early stages, right? The talking stage, how we call it, is mostly done through text messaging these days, right? Whether you like it or not, that's just the way it is. So you exchange phone numbers, or if not phone numbers, you maybe exchange like social media apps, you exchange Instagrams or, something along these lines. And you start texting, right? It's the easiest. It's the least amount. The way that requires the least amount of effort at these early stages, right? It's safe in that sense, right? It's not like we have to like call someone and you know what I mean, like they're not going to answer. We just text them and wait for them to reply to us, right? That's fine. That's normal. All right, but here's where this becomes an issue. We overdo it. Right, we start texting someone and then we create, what I call that false sense of intimacy through text messaging. Right, we're not really seeing them in person yet, and as far as anybody should be concerned at this point, we're still complete and perfect strangers. We don't know the first thing about another, but we tend to, text each other a lot, and through texting, we're almost on a certain level or in a certain stage of our relationship, which often doesn't really align with where we really at. Right, so I'll give you an example. Like through text messaging, we might already have like cute nicknames for each other. And by the way, let me know in the comments if this is something that you have done in the past. Right, have you texted too much, and then what were the results? Right, so we overdo it. So we text each other too much. So we might have already like these cute nicknames for each other, and we say all these cute things, and sometimes it's late at night, and we even get a little bit more romantic and sexual than we should be at this stage. Again, we're talking to someone that at this point we barely know, if anything, right? And a lot of people kind of tell themselves, well, that's kind of like, I don't have a lot of time, or they don't have a lot of time. Like that's the way we communicate. Like we text each other. I like texting, right? And here's where you're wrong about that, right? The texting, and the reason why it creates what I call the false sense of intimacy, and the reason why it's false, it's because it's not real. It's because if I have the luxury of like waiting a certain amount of time and making sure that when I return that text message, it's the most, charming and funny and interesting way to respond, right? If I have time to think about that, and you have time to think about that, if I can maybe even ask a friend, what I should say. A lot of my clients ask me and be like, hey, Lion, here's a text message. And that's something that I do with them on a regular basis, right? I help them formulate and communicate, especially at these early stages. So if you, like can ask a friend, if you can ask a dating coach, if you can, just wait and think like, that's not really you, right? This is the person that you're trying to portray. This is what you want other people to see, but that's not really the real you. Do you know what I mean? The real you, and it's the same thing with the phone. You know what I mean? Like when you have that sense of privacy and that sense of safety, when I can just like hang up the phone or stop that video chat. Like again, this is not really me, right? It doesn't compare. Even a video chat doesn't really compare, let alone text messaging. But all of that doesn't really compare to like that in-person interaction. When I'm standing in front of you and I'm having a conversation, and you can see how I feel and I can see how you feel just based on your body language, right? If you're uncomfortable, if you're comfortable, if your eyes light up, or if I lose your eye contact and you're looking somewhere else and you grab your phone and you get distracted or whatever, all of these things are as, if not even more important than the words that you are saying, right? They say that 94% of communication is nonverbal, right? I don't know if that number is, high like that, but I mean, I definitely would say that most of what goes on in communication, especially in dating, happens in between the lines, right? In between the actual words and what we, you know what I mean? Like what we mean goes a lot beyond just what we actually, the words that we're saying. So when we're just texting, right, we're getting to know what I like to think of it like as the tip of the iceberg, and the entire thing stays hidden. So again, we're building that emotional connection and that emotional bond through texting with a person that we barely know. So we're creating a person that we would like to see in our minds, and more often than not, it doesn't really align. It doesn't align at all, really, with the person, with the actual person. And often enough, what happens is that if we do meet them in person, right, and our expectations are here, we tend to be very disappointed. And it doesn't have to do anything with the actual person. It has to do with our expectations, because we build them up in our minds to be a very specific way, based on how we read through their text messages, and that doesn't really justify itself, right? Because when we do meet them in person, we're like, oh, that's not how I saw them at all. You know what I mean? So again, we created a specific expectation, very high expectations of what we want to see, and then it doesn't really justify. You know what I mean? It's not the real person. So we get very disappointed. So again, it kind of kills the relationship. It kills intimacy. It kills that attraction before we actually really give this a chance. Right. Another thing that happens more often than not is that we also, overdo it to a point where it just becomes boring. The dating, process is all about elevating the level, right? We always want to go from one thing to the other. Otherwise, we get bored, because at the end of the day, if you think about it, again, this is a complete stranger. We have nothing really holding us together at this point. So unless we feel like there is a continuous level of excitement and that's growing from one interaction to the next, eventually that just dies. You know what I mean? So if we've been talking to someone for more than a few weeks, more than I would say 1 or 2 weeks, really, we already are in a territory where it just becomes boring, because again, we're not together, where we're not really building anything, where we're just kind of hoping that it's there, and we're again creating an emotional connection with a person that we're building up in our minds, and not really necessarily with a real person. So it just becomes boring after a certain point, unless we really start seeing them in person. So here's my rule of thumb, right? A very simple way to kind of handle dating at these early stages. You want to potentially text someone that you just met on a dating app, or met at the gym, and you exchange phone numbers, or whatever, social media apps. You want to text them, before you see them in person and start dating them on a regular basis. You want to text them maybe for a week, and max maybe 2 weeks. Throughout that period of time, I would focus as much as possible. I don't want to get to the good morning text messages. I don't want to interact with them. I don't want to initiate them. I don't want to encourage you to continue doing them either. Right? It's a false sense of intimacy. This is not real, and it doesn't show effort. It doesn't show interest. It's really meaningless at these stages. Right? So instead of that, what I really want to do is just focus on the logistics. I want our conversations, right? Sure, I can talk to you maybe for a day or two right after I met you, about just general things about where you live and what do you do, some basic stuff that we maybe talk about as soon as we meet someone new. But for the most part, after that, for the first week or two, again, is I want to talk logistics. I really want to encourage each other to really see each other in person, because that's what the real getting to know one another begins, and that's where the dating stage begins, right? When we actually physically go on dates. That's why it's called the dating stage. It's not this. That's not dating, right? This is I don't know, maybe if you're looking for a pen pal, maybe, sure, do this. But if you're looking for someone to be in a relationship with and you're looking to date, then what you want to do, your number one goal is to spend time with them in person and go on dates. So what you want to do through your text messaging is you also want to, discourage too much sharing, too many conversations. Definitely discourage and not engage in any sort of sexting or anything too intimate and too close, because you're literally robbing yourself of it, from the chance of actually spending time with them. Because again, if I'm already getting all of these emotions and I'm getting all of these things through just texting you, it discourages both of you to really see each other in person. It removes the urgency, right? To see, if I'm meeting someone and I'm like, oh, she's really amazing and she's really cute and I want to see you, right? I want to continue getting to know you. But if you're sexting me every night and we already have cute pet names for each other, honey this, bunny that, this, that, you know what I mean? It's well, I'm going to see her maybe next week. I feel like we're already there. I feel like I've already, to a certain extent, gotten you. Do you know what I mean? Because these things we don't do unless we're really close to the person. So again, that's why overdoing it with texting, right? It creates a false sense of intimacy. And I want to avoid that as much as possible for so many reasons. All of these reasons that I just mentioned, you want to avoid over texting. You want to keep the texting short and sweet. You want to discourage any sort of relationship texting where it's good morning, good nights, every night, these repetitive, you know what I mean, things that don't really mean anything. Especially at these early stages before we actually start dating each other. It's not only do they not mean anything, it's, again, you should agree with me when I say this, it is weird. this is something that someone that you don't know, but you already call them bunny and honey and you say good morning sunshine. Like, that's weird. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's a time and place for everything. I'm not saying these things are always terrible, but there's a time and place. And unless I've been dating you for a few months now on a regular basis and we go on dates and you know what I mean? Like, that's not the time and place for having these like types of conversations through text messaging. Right? So again, so many people just try to get all of these same feelings and all of these things just through text messaging. And your job should be to try to avoid that as much as possible. Focus on the logistics. You know what I mean? If they say good morning, you can mention, hey, by the way, there's this thing going on this weekend, and just kind of like seeing, hey, are they going to ask you out? Are they going to initiate that? Sometimes you can even say like, hey, you know what? Yeah, that's great. Thank you. You know what I mean? Maybe we should like hang out this week, and something along these lines and see how they do that. Some people, again, have no intention. And this is something I see very often, and women get very discouraged by that, is that sometimes they don't realize it, but they create all of these like online texting relationships with men, and then months later, after they've wasted so much time, realize that the guy never even had the intention of taking you out on dates and actually doing with you. He might be in another relationship. He might be just interested in certain, like feelings of validation or whatever it is that he's trying to just get from you, but he has no intention of giving you what you want. So stop wasting your time with that. A week or two of texting, and if there's still no intention from his side to actually see you in person and you know what I mean? Move on to the next person. Stop waiting for someone to be like, okay, now it's the time to like see you. Again, and one last thing I want to say is that the texting stage is not is only there to just kind of like allow you to talk about logistics so you can see each other in person. This is not, and I want to like make it very clear, this is not the time to get to know them. So many women, kind of use the excuse of like, well, I just want to make sure that I don't waste my time by going on dates with someone that I don't really know. So I'm going to text them for a few weeks to get to know them. No. Right? Again, you're not really getting to know them. They're just showing you a version of themselves that they feel like you want to see. What you want to do is get to know them in person, right? So don't waste 3, 4, 5 weeks of your time or even more than that getting to know them, right? And then go on a date and realize that that's not your person with the excuse, with the thought that you're saving your time. You're not saving your time. If anything, you're wasting more of your time. You'll save a lot more of your time by going on a couple of text messages and going on a short 30-minute coffee date and then understanding whether or not you want to see them or not see them. That's how you're going to save your time and move on through this quicker and without building that emotional attachment. But because what happens, you start texting someone for 3 months, right? Whether you realize it or not, whether you want it or not, you're creating an emotional bond with that person. I don't care what you think. I don't care what you say. It is true. You're going to start creating an emotional bond with that person. Right? So at this point, even if you do see the red flags, even if you do see all the things that don't work out and the reasons why you shouldn't be together, you're going to start ignoring these things. And chances are you're going to cost yourself a lot more time than you otherwise would if you just literally stuck to logistics, went on a quick date, and then realized, hey, you know what? This is what I want to invest in, or this is not something I want to invest in, and then move on to someone else. Right? So again, don't overdo it at these early stages with texting. You want to keep it as simple as possible. I have a whole section in my course where I talk about the different dating stages, going in from texting into, from the talking stage where you're texting to the dating stage and into the relationship stage in detail of what you want to focus on, boundaries that you need to be setting, conversations that you need to be had, etc. throughout every single one of these stages in order to move through the dating process as smoothly as possible. And it's a huge chapter. It's a huge part of my Dating 101 course. If you want to find some information on that, you can see it on my website at datingbyline.com or click in the link that I post for my website lower in the description, and you'll find all the information there. If you have any questions, if you have any comments, as usual, don't forget to like and comment on that video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.